John 17, Jesus' high priestly prayer, one of the high points really in John's gospel. It's a well-known passage. John Knox, the Scottish reformer, wanted this read to him by his wife on his deathbed. He said that John 17, this prayer from Jesus to God on behalf of his disciples, was an anchor for him, the most important anchor for him. And it's what he wanted to leave this world listening to in his ears. We see in this prayer from Jesus to the Father two underlying foundations. Firstly, we see this repetition of Jesus asking for glory. He's saying, glorify me, and then he wants the Father to be glorified. Glorify yourself, Father. Jesus wants the glory of God to come about. That is his great aim, and it's our great aim in life and in death, that God will be glorified. Remember, that just means to show off the beauty of who God is, to show off all of the unchangeable characteristics of who God is. And Jesus says, bring that about, Father. Show yourself to the world. Show yourself to the world, and show yourself to the world through me. And of course, that's coming in a few days' time as he heads towards the cross and he is resurrected from the grave. The first foundation is glory. The second is unity. He repeats this theme of being united. He talks about being united to the Father, and in the same way that the Father and the Son are united, they are one. He says, make that so with my disciples. Would they be one? Would they be united? Would they be together? Would they be close? Would they function as a unit, as one, just like you and I, Father, do? Two principles that he wants, and two ways that he sees that coming about. Firstly, he turns to the Father, and he says this in verse 15, I do not ask that you take them out of the world. He's talking about his disciples, but that you keep them from the evil one. First, he prays to the Father that the Father would keep his disciples. You know, if you and I persevere to the end, if we are still walking closely with God at the end of our days, just like John Knox was, then that is because Jesus has asked for that from the Father. Yes, you and I will stay away from sin if we are truly Jesus' disciples. Remember, he's said that. If you love me, you will keep my commandments. We will do that. We will stay away from sin. We will walk closely with God. But that is because Jesus has asked the Father for that. If we are kept by God, that's because God is keeping us, not because we have done any wonderful work or we have worked really hard or proven ourselves and God looks at us and says, yeah, I'm going to keep that one. No, it's because he has chosen to keep us and persevere in and through us and preserve us unto the end. Jesus says, keep them, Father. And the second thing he asks is sanctify them. Verse 17, sanctify them in the truth. Your word is truth. He asks the Father to grow us. That's what sanctification is, to grow in our likeness of Jesus, to be made holy. And the personification of holiness is Jesus. Jesus says, make them holy. Keep them away from sin, preserve them, make them more like me. That's what he asks of the Father. Keep them, Father. Sanctify them, grow them, make them fruitful. Each day, would you just shape them and conform them more into my likeness? And he prays that for his disciples that are there in the room with him. But then he also prays it for us. He says this, I do not ask for these only, the disciples that are there with him, but also for those who will believe in me through their word. He says, I'm praying it for these, but also for any disciple that comes through the ministry of the apostles that is going to be kicked off at Pentecost in just a few months' time after Jesus prays this prayer. Jesus is praying directly for you and I, that God would keep us, that God would sanctify us, and that as he does, that we will be one, we will be united to God and united to one another in the church, and that he will be glorified. That is the great ambition of Jesus. The great ambition of God, the Father, Son, and Spirit, is that God would be glorified. As we are kept, as we are preserved. Remember last week we heard that we are going to face trials and tribulation and persecution, and Jesus is saying, keep them in the midst of all that. Don't let them stray, Father. Keep them close and fast to you. And as we do, God is glorified. We show off the beautiful character of God. And as we're sanctified, as we grow in our love and knowledge of Jesus through his word, through the truth that is God's word, as we become more like Jesus, God is glorified. We show off the beauty of God, and we enjoy the union with him and with one another. So would we hold fast to truth in God's word this week. And as we do, would we be sanctified? Would we grow into a greater likeness of Jesus? And would we find great pleasure in knowing that God is keeping us? God is protecting us. God is defending us. God is preserving us and will do until the end. And in both of those things, we get to enjoy the pleasure of God being glorified, of his great and perfect character being shown off, reflected, bounced off us in our lives. And that is the great goal of Jesus in this prayer for his disciples. And it is our great goal as his disciples, as we are those who Jesus prays for specifically 2,000 years ago, but also in the ministry which he continues every day since, interceding for the saints. That is what he is doing now, praying to us, praying and bringing our requests to the Father, but also advocating for us to the Father, interceding for us, ensuring that the Father will keep us, the Father will preserve us, and ensuring that in all of these things, God is glorified.